So this is Big Tire Garage Q&A session, part 2. Okay, once again, we're here in the Big Tire Garage. This is week 2, my Q&A section. I told you guys that as long as all this craziness is going on, I was gonna pop in here once a week, answer the questions that you guys put up on all my different social media outlets. I pick a couple, well, actually this time I picked 5 questions a week. I'll answer the questions, and then I'll randomly pick somebody to get some swag out of the swag pile. So here we go. So once again, Big Tire Garage, got my Lockjaw cup. I'll put a link on where you can get your own Lockjaw cup. They're pretty sweet. Also have Big Tire Garage ones. I probably should use the Big Tire Garage one today, next time. All right, here we go. Question 1. Question 1 is, man, I got a lot of questions like this. So this is from Keith Bishop. I chose his. But there was a lot of versions of this question. So it was best tire sizes for axle sizes, not include tons of axles. So basically, I think what you're asking for, Keith, is, everybody wants to know how big of a tire can I run on a certain axle? And the answer to that question is there's so many different answers to it. But here's some rules of thumb, right? So there's a lot of things at play. First is going to be vehicle weight. Second is going to be actual size of the tire. And then you're going to have the amount of power you're trying to push through that axle. So anytime those numbers get high, so we have a large vehicle weight, let's say 6,000 pounds, 5,000 pounds plus. You have a large tire, 40 inches or bigger, and you have a fair amount of power going through the axle, let's say anything above 300 horsepower, you definitely need to come up with some type of 1-ton axle. So those options are going to be, your Dana 60s, 14 bolts, Dana 70s. You can go Dana 80 if you want to go crazy. A good, well-built Ford 9-inch will be able to handle that power. And the reason that those axles do so well in those applications is just because of the size of the components inside the axle. You have large axle shafts with large spline counts, so usually 30 to 35 spline. If you go aftermarket, you can get up into 40 spline stuff or even 47 spline. You have large ring and pinions, so because the ring gear is physically large in size, you have a lot of tooth contact patch between the ring gear and the pinion, so that makes it incredibly strong. And what is also very important, what people sometimes will think about, is the size of the pinion where the yoke attaches to it. So that's basically my sort of like rule of thumb with axles. If I have a heavy vehicle with high horsepower and a big tire, it gets a big axle. If I can change one of those 3 numbers, then I can try to get away with a smaller axle. But in all honesty, I mean, the money you're going to spend building up a bomb-proof Dana 44 versus just putting in a 1-ton, you're probably going to get away with putting in a 1-ton, honestly, cheaper in the long run. So never be afraid to put 1-tons on anything. So there you go. Hopefully I answered your question. I know I rambled a lot there and I apologize. Trevor Stover, what are some aftermarket Speedo setups I can put on my rig? So probably the coolest thing that I have discovered in the past few years has been the Autometer GPS speedometer unit. So it's really simple. It comes with this tiny little magnetic puck that you stick on any metal surface, so like a wiper cowl or somewhere on the cage. Wire it in, and it uses GPS technology to give you a speedo. You got to calibrate it a little bit, but it is honestly makes it so much simpler to have a speedometer in your rig, and you don't have to worry about figuring out, do you have the right pulses coming out of your transfer case, or do you have the right gear in your transfer case and a cable goes up? It's way simpler. It's probably the best thing I've found over the years. I've got them in a bunch of rigs and I love them. So there you go. That would be, if anyone asks me if they need a Speedo, GPS speedometer. I know Autometer makes one. There's probably some other people that make one too, but that would be what I would go with all day long. Joshua Marshall. I see on roll cage front down bars, some guys will put a bend in the down bar to form around a dash. Does this create a weak point in the cage at that bend? Short answer is yes. So to understand how tubing works inside a roll cage or a chassis, you kind of got to think about how metal works in general. Whenever you bend a piece of tubing or bend a piece of metal, even in a bender, you are deforming the tubing. So think about it when you, like, you know, when you're trying to cut a piece of metal off and you get to that point where it's almost off but not off, and you can take it and you can just wiggle it back and forth, 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 and then it breaks off. Okay, you've broken it because you've bent it, and it breaks. When it comes to a piece of tubing, it's no different. When you put a bend in a piece of tubing, you have deformed it. You've made one side longer and one side shorter for it to go around that arc. Rule of thumb, any type of roll cage or any type of chassis that you build, you never want to have a bend that doesn't have some type of support in it. So I could show you on a little piece, I could show you some BendTech software. So basically what you want to do is you want to take, wherever you have a bend, you want to add a piece of tubing. So if you're bending it around your dash, you should try to put some type of dash bar or windshield bar in there that basically welds onto those bends and hopefully helps them from continuing to bend in the event of a crash. That's why if you look at like a trophy truck chassis or a big luxury pre-runner that's been built or an Ultra 4 car, if you really look at it, most of the time, there's not a lot of bent tubing inside that chassis. There's a whole bunch of straight pieces of tubing. And it's because the straight pieces of tubing basically connect all the chassis together and they create what's called a node. A node is when you have a lot of pieces of tubing joining in one spot. That node is incredibly strong. So if you do roll the vehicle over, the energy that is absorbed by the chassis travels through all the tubes and basically ends at that node. That's what you want. So if you have a bent piece of tubing, the best thing to do is to plan your cage in a way that you can support that tubing, preferably on multiple sides. So if it's a dash bar, if you put a bend to get around your dash, in the ideal world, you'd probably run a dash bar across the front of the dash, so basically maybe behind the dash tied, and then maybe through the inner fender out to the front part of the rig. So that's basically what you want to do. And so yes, short answer to your question is yes, whenever you bend a piece of tubing, it becomes weaker, but there is some science behind it where you can strengthen that bend up, and then you're good to go. So, Keith Bishop. Okay, I told you every week I'd answer a personal question, and today I'm gonna throw two questions in here. So, Keith Bishop is, how tall is my hair, and what are your two favorite whiskeys? We have some side bets going. So, my hair is probably on average maybe 3 to 4 inches tall. I probably need a haircut right now, to be honest with you. So the story behind the hair was that my son was growing up and he was getting older. He was getting taller. I was filming and we were really busy in that part of the season. My hair just kept getting longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. I didn't have time to get down to get it cut. And I told him that as he grew taller, he was getting close to being taller than me. And I told him, no. See, the hair counts, right? And that joke just sort of stuck. Ironically, it's kind of handy because if I'm in a rig working, sit in the driver's seat, roll my head around and see if I can basically, feel a tube touching the hair. And if it is, then I know it's too close and I got to make some adjustments. So it's kind of like a tool. Current favorite whiskey right now, Chattanooga whiskey, Tennessee High Malt 111. That's probably my go-to right now. I got a E.H. Taylor small batch, which is sort of super fancy. That's what I'm feeling all like, ooh, fancy whiskey time. So those are my two favorites right now that I've been working through. When it gets cold, wintertime, I tend to drink a little, I like the burn to the old rye. I think it's a little hotter, makes it feel a little better. So in the winter, I usually do some rye. And for the rye, I have two favorites right there. Right now, I've got some Knob Creek small batch rye, which I've been pretty happy with, and some H. Clark, which is a local distillery here in Thompson Station. And H. Clark, they have a great rye. So those are probably my two favorite whiskeys and two favorite ryes at this current moment right now. And the hair is between 4 to 5 inches on average most of the time. So there you go. And if you look online, you can find a hair tutorial from me where I show people how to spike my hair. It's somewhere, I think it may be on the YouTube channel, I don't know. Charles Reinhardt, any more information on the Ram Charger build so far? I've seen all the videos you've done like 20 times. And how did you hook the Y-Link steering up on the front of that truck? So for those of you who haven't seen my Ramcharger build, it is a early 90s Dodge Ramcharger. I'm building that on my show Four-Wheeler, which is on MotorTrend and MotorTrend Demand app. We've done 2 episodes on it. I really think that the Ramcharger is going to become a popular platform for full-size vintage vehicles to build. I think, you know, the Ford Bronco is incredibly popular, so they're getting hard to find, they're getting expensive. K5 Blazers have been pricey for a long time now. The Ramchargers are still a good budget vehicle that you can get into. I think I paid like $1,800 for that one, and it was actually in pretty good shape. The engine was a little bit wore out, but it was running, driving, full-size truck. I went ahead and did a 1-ton axle swap underneath it and dropped a Hemi underneath the hood. And as part of the 1-ton axle swap, I dealt a little bit with the steering because the Ramcharger, it's kind of like the old Chevy trucks where it's a push-pull steering, and I was converting it to crossover. Now on the show, I was hoping to be able to do a Y-link steering, which basically has a tie rod, connects the 2 tires together, and then the drag link comes down off the pitman arm and attaches to a special tie rod end that has a tapered mount in it, so it basically creates like a little Y. But it's not going to work. I hope that was going to work because that's the exact steering that I have on my 715 Lockjaw, but the springs on Lockjaw are outboarded a little bit further than the Ramcharger. So what's happening is the drag link is actually hitting on the leaf spring pack. I can't get it underneath it at full lock. So the plan right now is to take advantage of the fact that I used a Dana 1-ton that I got from Dana Spicer. It's basically all the same specs as a JK 1-ton would be. And the nice thing is that they have like an integrated high steer arm on them. So I'm gonna be able to come off the steering box down to that little high steer arm. The tie rod will be underneath the leaf pack going back and forth. If you were planning that to do a swap, a 1-ton swap into the Ramcharger, I think you definitely want to plan on a high steer arm, at least on the passenger side of the knuckle, to clear the leaf pack, just to get the steering to all work correctly together. So that's the 5 questions. Now, there's one more question that came up, and it was probably the most asked questions, and it's the most asked question I get from anybody anytime I put anything on social media. And so I'm going to put it at the end of this video, so you have to watch the whole video. So here you go. The question is, what's up with the GoManche, and when are we going to see more videos on that truck? So here's the whole story about the GoManche. The GoManche was being built for is being built. I still have it, don't worry, I'm still working on it. It's a project that was being built for my new Amazon Prime show, Big Tire Garage. And we were in the process of building it and working on it. And then what happened is life got crazy. So I'd originally left my old TV show and started this new idea of doing basically a different type of company that does a different type of TV. Agreed to work with Amazon Prime, agreed to work with Facebook and YouTube, and we started creating these videos. And then what happened was some of the other people who I used to work with at that production company, they asked if I would help them do the same thing. And that's where my new company sort of blossomed and flourished. And that's how we started doing the shows that we're doing right now and helping other people do the same thing. In the middle of all that, I bought a piece of property because I knew that if I was going to have a business, I couldn't be running it out of the garage behind my house. I needed a commercial property. So I bought some commercial property as an investment as well and started building this building. And that's when I started working with Miracle Truss. And we put together this amazing shop and sort of office hangout space up front that we call it. And it is a true television studio. We have 2 dedicated studios in this building. This one, which is Big Tire Garage, and then a one in the back. The one in the back was never supposed to be used. I was just supposed to have it there for if in the future somebody wanted to have some TV made and they needed an extra studio space. So that's why I put it back there. Then MotorTrend called and asked if I wanted to help create four-wheeler TV. And originally I was kind of up in the air about it. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. I'm kind of got this Big Tire Garage thing going, and I've started building this Jeep Comanche. And but then I met them. I flew and met with them, met with everybody from MotorTrend, met with everybody from the production company that was going to make the show. And honestly, they were just such great people and so cool. They were so accommodating in order for me to do four-wheeler that there was no way I could say no. So that meant immediately, like we had that meeting, and then 2 months later, we had to be filming the show. So everything else had to be put on hold in order to launch Four Wheeler. And Four Wheeler was 10 episodes. We shot it over, I think, 3 months. And it was shot in my shop in the other studio, which is way back there. And basically turned that into the Four Wheeler studio and created Four Wheeler TV and built the Goat Built LJ, started on the Razor build, brought the Zook back in, you know, just, it was great. And it was so much fun. A lot of work, but a lot of fun. And because of that, everything else kind of got put on hold. But now we're back at it. We've wrapped that first season. We're getting ready to get into second season. Second season will obviously be less hectic because of the fact that we are much more attuned to each other's workload and how we're going to work together. That's why I started working on the Willys wagon. That's going to be the second build series that goes up on Amazon Prime. I'm hoping to get that up in the summer. At the same time, I'm still working on the Jeep Comanche at the shop, at the house. I'm probably going to move it up here in the next couple of weeks and have it sitting right where the Bug's sitting right now, so I can basically just bounce back and forth between the two. So that's your update for the GoManche. It hasn't gone away. I still have it. I'm still working on it. I wanted to start working on the Willys wagon because I'm absolutely in love with this thing and I've had it for so long, and this is a perfect time to sort of jump on it and get rolling on it. And but I think at this point I'm going to get that GoManche together, get it as a roller, and get it over here into the new shop space, into the new studio, and we'll finish that build out right here instead of trying to finish it at the house, because honestly, I've moved most of my tools into this new shop. The shop behind the house is kind of just storage at this point. So there's all of your answers to your questions for this week and your GoManche update. Once again, there was 5 questions. I put 5 numbers into the random number generator, and the random number generator chose number 2 this time. So Trevor Stover, Trevor, shoot me a DM, private message, email, whatever you want. We'll talk. I'll get you some Big Tire Garage swag. I'll even dip into the swag pile up front. We'll hook you up with some stuff. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I guess we'll see you next week. Got questions? Put them in the comment section. I'll answer them. Until then, I got to build that. Gotta go.